Yeah, I'm already started.
Keep in mind,
So
I'm congested from my cold. So. Okay, so what are your
Does architecture tell a story?
Yes, architecture can tell a story. But I think we have to clarify what we mean by story. Um, Architecture, it can convey meaning, and the meaning can be in the form of function, can be in the form of technology, it can be in the form of cultural preferences, stylistic preferences, and any historian or academic studying architecture or looking at architecture or any art form for that matter can and often will look into sort of the underlying aspects, underlying meanings, and I use that word sort of as a very in the broadest sense of its interpretation. To embody uh, a story.
Yeah.
And the story can be that. Now, if you're thinking of story in terms of a narrative, I would say probably it can. There are architects that do that. John Haydick is one who wrote poetry and also designed a series of narrative events in his work. But in general, that's not normally the process in architectural practice.
What do you mean by narrative?
Well, narrative would be, I guess I describe narrative as sort of a sequence of events, and usually they're documented in some way, whether it's in writing, in form, anything else. Yes.
This is
That would
drawing
definitely be podcast.
2. I'm gonna continue to finish
Yeah,
this
I
one. I
know.
just wanted to give you something.
Okay, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
and the last drawing I'm still working on. So yeah, I'll be done with that one. But this one, I still have a couple more drawings to do.
All right,
So.
perfect. Thank you very much. Okay.
So, second question. Do you think fiction influences design or how you create it?
Well, personally, I don't read fiction, so in general, I don't like movies. I'm just strange in that regard, but I suppose. And again, I guess part of it is just defining what we mean by fiction, or what you mean by fiction. In general, I'd say there is a creative, imaginative process associated with fiction, which I do believe can influence or be applied to the design process. Every design starts with an idea, and an idea that is evolved into a concept. And I think most of the architectural process occurs in the concepting phase versus the idea phase. And that isn't to say that fiction is all about ideas. Of course, having an idea, a fictional idea, and again, I'm using fiction in the sense of it being not necessarily directly evolving from reality.
Yeah.
But not necessarily being untrue. I mean, I think there's an association of fiction as being something that isn't true.
Yeah. Not all the case. Sometimes fiction is realistic fiction as well.
Right.
So-
I mean, there are historical narratives and things like that, which may not be exactly the truth per se, but
it's in the
they're.
setting.
So again, I mean, that's sort of in this short conversation, it's hard to really get to the.
Don't worry, we're editing a lot.
The meat of the use of the words. But
Well, you said that in general, no, but it involves the imagination to convey intuition into a proposition. So,
yeah,
say what
that
means.
well, in that diagram I showed you before, there, to me, there's two sides of the line, so to speak. There is a sensation which we bring to consciousness as an intuition, and this we might call a thought.
Yeah.
Or in its expression, an idea. And then once we have had the intuition, we then judge the intuition and essentially begin to think about the thought. And the thinking process is where we go from a thought through thinking, and from an idea through the process of thinking to a concept. So I believe architecture is much more embodied in the concepting portion versus in the idea.
Do you think there's a relationship between the process of thinking in architecture versus fiction? Do you think the processes are similar?
Gosh, I'm not a good authority on fiction. And again, when you say fiction, I'm thinking of, narrative writing, storytelling, that may or may not have, grounding in an historical event, an event that could be articulated as being true, but what is your question?
The processes, are they the same? I mean, since they're both they're in the thinking.
I can't answer. I can't answer that. Again, I think depending. I believe that the concepting phase, as we described a moment ago for architecture, I think that's where the architectural process occurs, in the formation of the concept. Whether that's where fiction also happens, I don't know. I'm certain that great writers always have to go through a series of processes of refinement, of editing, and in a way, that's again, to bring an idea to language, which architects do as well. Ultimately, we have to be able to take our drawing and justify it in verbal or written language. That's why we don't just send our drawings to the client. We present them. That's why you present your projects. You could just turn your project in and go home, and then we'll evaluate it. Well, I think you want to explain your project to me, and you want to tell me what you want to bring it to language. And I think that's what certainly writers have to do that as well. I mean, they're working in language, right? So they have to go from their idea of bringing it to a story, to language, exactly, to concept.